Well, as you know, the presidential race in full swing, and the New York City mayoral race, it's just around the corner. Trust me, after we get through November, that's where eyes are going to be in our neck of the woods. Now, that is Mayor de Blasio's poll numbers are starting to inch up even a little bit. 50% of registered voters say that he deserves re-election. That's up 7 points since last year. In a hypothetical matchup with 4 other candidates, he's getting 42%. Now, you'll notice Christine Quinn in second with 12%, and she said right now she's given no indication that she's even running. Now, she ran against de Blasio last time around, came up short here, even though she was the favorite by most of our estimations going into the primary. And there's also speculation the former city council speaker may run again. Earlier today, Dominic sat down with Quinn and he asked her about that and also her work in helping the homeless.
There's a lot of buzz that you could possibly be the next mayor of New York City.
You know, buzz is always a compliment, as long as they're not buzzing that, you know, you're doing something terrible. Buzz is always a compliment, and I appreciate that. And I loved being an elected official. I really did, and I may not have been the best candidate, I'll give you that, but I think I was a pretty good elected official, and I hope I get the opportunity to serve in government someday. But this job at Wynn right now is a mission for me, and my focus is on continuing to do it and do it better and have us succeed more for our family.
You don't seem to have a lot of, let's say, patience for people that say, not in my backyard. I don't want homeless shelters in my community.
Get over it. Get over it if you don't want a shelter in your backyard. Look, the city needs to do a better job planning and developing shelters. We should have a plan for shelters. They should be real shelters with services and security and kitchens, not kind of made over Holiday Inns. And I get why people would say, this isn't well thought out, this isn't planned. That's fair. So the city needs to do its role in developing a plan. Providers need to do our role. If the city asks us to take over or run a shelter and it's a bad model, we need to say no. I've said no to buildings already in the year, and that's terrifying to do if you're a nonprofit because you think they'll never come back. But we have to do our role, and communities have to do their role, which means site shelters and site permanent housing for homeless people and homeless families in their district. Look, people say all the time, and they're right, I don't want that guy sleeping in my doorway. I don't want that guy with all of the wagons of, you know, bottles on my corner. And that's not an inappropriate thing for people to say. But they can't simultaneously say that and then say, I don't want a shelter in my neighborhood. And I understand fear. And look, I've had concerns about shelters in my district when I was speaker. But I dare anybody to come meet some of our little ones, to meet some of our moms, 46% of whom are working, and then say you don't want a facility for them in your neighborhood. Who doesn't want hardworking women in their neighborhood? Who wouldn't want women who are fighting for their children's survival, who've been brave enough to leave a batterer, or brave enough to say, you know what, I have a substance abuse problem. I'm mentally ill and I need help. I just don't understand how people who've, you know, with the grace of God, been lucky enough to have homes can find no smidge of empathy towards those who don't. I don't take the city off the hook, and I don't take providers off the hook. But we're only going to solve this if we really decide to become a team as a city, united in helping our brothers and sisters. And, you know, most of the people in shelter are families. 70% of the people who slept in shelter last night and will sleep in shelter tonight in New York City are families with children. So we've had the tabloids, in my opinion, with hideously racist pictures on the cover of the most disheveled, potentially frightening-looking homeless men of color they could find, put on the cover to scare New Yorkers, to make the homeless us and them and people you could not care about and not see. And we have to get the facts out there about students, college kids, moms, what we call the forgotten face of homelessness. Because when you see the whole picture, you see those college kids, those moms, those little ones, your heart's going to break open And then that's going to unite the team to help everybody. And this is New York. You can pretend to be as fancy schmancy as you want, but most New Yorkers are 2 paychecks away from losing their apartments. Let's just be honest about it. So it really is, you know, there but for the grace of God, and people need to remember that in this city.
And we're going to get more into the homeless conversation in Dom's in the second part of his interview with her. She's different than the candidate, Christine Quinn. You covered her in city council. She's been around this table many times since she lost the race. She seems, as I was saying before, more comfortable in her own skin. She ran a crummy race for mayor in a field that many people, the betting money was she was going to be the Democratic nominee and then the next mayor. It seems that she'd do better this time around if she chose to run. You agree?
I think we're starting to see her personality. I believe, Richard, that Bloomberg, Mayor Bloomberg, Michael Bloomberg, hurt her tremendously. The close relationship, whether it was or not, but the way New Yorkers perceived it, and him extending term limits, she was a direct victim of that. I am telling you, this woman has the personality. I don't know whether or not she'll run, but she has the personality to be the mayor of New York City.
And you know, Jonathan, we've gone through the polls. Sure, there might be an uptick for de Blasio, but the narrative is built for him. It's really hard to change it. This is a guy, whether it's fair or not, he's got an administration that's a gang that can't shoot straight. Even if crime numbers are down, every time there's a bad story, it's on him. Terrible relationship with the NYPD, maybe his strongest asset or advocate, certainly for the white voters in New York, was Bratton. He's gone right now. And there is, as Dominic has described with certain people, an embrace, but at a distance, with some of the black leadership right now, where they're looking also as the mayor tries to navigate, between different populations, et cetera. I think he's vulnerable. You agree?
I do. I think he's vulnerable, but it really depends on the dynamic of the race. I mean, if you have 4 or 5 people running, everybody splits the I don't like de Blasio vote. The de Blasio vote is going to be at the top, just sheer numbers. But in a head-to-head race with somebody like Scott Stringer or Christine Quinn, he's still the favorite because he's the incumbent. And let's be real, I mean, there's so much power that the mayor has that folks are just going to be aligned with just because they don't want to be on the short end of that should he win his second term, and so with that comes a lot of support that he'll have throughout various communities, and so that's why it's so difficult for somebody to defeat and unseat an incumbent mayor. There's just so much power there. Is it possible? Yeah. I mean, we'll say the X factor is, just as it is with Chris Christie and Andrew Cuomo now, it's these scandals, it's these investigations that are still sort of pending and things still kind of come into light. I mean, we don't know where that's going to go.
I want to ask that in 1 second, but just on him, the one thing we haven't seen is friendly fire for him. He's faced a lot of criticisms, whether it's through the press here or certainly some of the more vocal opponents from within NYPD ranks and everything else. But if there's a primary, even Democrats are going to lay into him. I mean, the guy who can't show up on time here, the guy who, won't take questions, the guy who won't do X, Y, and Z. People think he's one bad move from Sharpton even turning on him. So he's vulnerable, right?
I think the only
he doesn't have too many core constituencies, is my point.
Well, if you look at his record, he actually has accomplished a great deal, I mean, the perception and reality are 2 different things. As you said, people think that crime is up, yet crime is still down.
He's seen as Cuomo's whipping boy, too.
There's that battling there. There's the investigations that are happening. It's the fact that he has an awful relationship with both the PD and the press, which doesn't help his cause and his rep, and the governor. So when you consider those types of things, it leads to that perception that he's weak and vulnerable and whatnot. But he actually has accomplished a great deal. And I speak to Democratic elected officials, and it's like many of which don't like him personally, many of which feel there's an opening because of his unpopularity. But when they look at his record and look at the stuff he's done, he's actually done a bunch of things.
He's one of the few politicians who can't actually figure a way to get credit for what they actually did. But when you hear, as a barrister as well as a former elected, that there's basically a broad subpoena, that's now been issued as it relates to the investigation within the de Blasio administration, that seems open-ended for a reason. They can go in a bunch of different directions. And sometimes, right, Scott, it's not even if they can't find what they were looking for, if they find something else in the course of the investigation, sometimes you get sunk by that as much as for the main thing they were looking for, right?
Oh, yeah. The thunderheads all around his head. I mean, big storms. And he dismisses it like he dismisses the media, but you can't. I mean, it's there, and it's serious enough that he's testy about it. Well, of course he's testy, he's nervous, but he's got a laundry list of things he hasn't done right, and as soon as people start picking on him a little bit, and depending on what Cuomo does, and depending on what drops in terms of shoes on this investigation, he could be in far more trouble than even we think. I mean, people haven't focused yet.
Nope. And again, Mr. Pripahara is the one that's looking into this, so as he says, stay tuned. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Dom, you stay with me. When we come back, we're going to have more of Dom's conversation with Christine Quinn, including the work she's doing to help out homeless women and kids, and even trying to get them into college. It's an amazing program here, doing some real good work. Stay with us.